Arsenal's pursuit of Eze?
I get the impression with Eze, if they pull the plug, he will go. If they decide they want to sign him, then that could happen pretty quickly. Same with Madueke. I think the striker pursuit is a little bit more complicated.
Clearly, they're not going to do Madueke, Eze, Šeško and Gyökeres. That isn't going to happen, surely.
I think Arsenal fans are growing a bit impatient. They've now signed more goalkeepers under Mikel Arteta than they have strikers.
Reports about Nwaneri as well. He can't really want out, can he?
I'd be flabbergasted if Arsenal let him go.
Yeah, I wonder where Arsenal fans stand on this, the prospect of potentially losing an academy product to bring in a Chelsea player.
Chelsea over the whole 90 minutes, I thought it was probably the most impressive performance.
Joao Pedro also came off the bench.
Let me tell you now, he was sensational. I can't think of a more impressive debut coming off the bench off the top of my head. I can see Joao Pedro starting the semi-final. I thought he was that good.
There's a little bit of the Gareth Southgate about Chelsea's run to the final, isn't there? I mean, they found themselves on the more favourable side of the draw. I would suggest if they were playing PSG or Real Madrid last night, they probably would be out. And I still make the winners of that particular semi-final heavy favourites to win the competition.
It's Sam Matterface on Premier League All Access with Scott Minto and Alex Crook. Now, Crookie's been on 17 holidays. He's been on 15 boat trips. He's gone to 8 race meetings during the dark period of the Premier League season, but he hasn't found time to give himself a haircut. What is this all about, Crook? You're going to special events where you're meeting dignitaries, you're making contacts, as you tell me all the contacts all the time, yet you haven't sorted out your appearance. I mean, what's going on here? You look, it's dangerously close to getting a Marge Simpson haircut going on there.
Do you know what? I'm not one of these guys who likes to spend hours in the hairdressers. I do see it as a little bit of a waste of time, as you can probably tell. So I drive past the hairdressers on occasion, and if there's no one in and I can nip in and just be in there for about 20 minutes, not do any small talk, I'll do it. If I have to queue, I end up looking like this.
Sam, Ruben Amorim doesn't do that. He takes his time on his appearance and his hair.
He does, doesn't he? Yes. You need to take some lessons from Ruben Amorim. If you want to continue to be referred to as the sexy Ruben Amorim, then you've got to sharpen up a little bit. We can sort that out for you. That could be our new season gift. We could get him a stylist. We could get him someone just to, touch up his appearance a bit.
Blimey, I think they'd be asking for too much money there.
To be fair, Scott, you are right. There is only 40 days at the start of the season. They can't work miracles. We were on 3 different assignments this weekend. Crook and Scott doing the Club World Cup. Crook's come back to do, he said, this is the last commentary I've done over this hard season. Sent everyone a picture about how difficult it was for him to have to do some work. He didn't tell anyone that we'd managed to funnel him a stat pack from James Fielden and that he'd been on holiday for 2 weeks beforehand, and Scott had probably done half his research for him anyway. You were doing the Club World Cup as well, though, Scott, more diligently, I think, Friday and Saturday night. And I was actually, until this morning, right? Okay, so it's Sunday morning. I was in Switzerland on Women's Euros duty. So, Scott, what did you see on Friday night? What have you seen over the course of the week? Because we have had complaints, I have to tell you, about your 2 behaviour last week.
About what behaviour last week?
Used to.
Really?
Well, we did. I got 2 big complaints last week about you two. The first one was on our YouTube comment section, which said that you lot are crazy, suggesting that no other country apart from a cold one can host a World Cup or a Euros in the summer. And then actually, a very experienced, in fact, a very good broadcaster, arguably one of the best broadcasters, sent me a series of voice notes complaining about your depiction of the situation at the Club World Cup and suggesting that actually Americans do not find the lightning strikes and delays and subsequent delays that offensive at all. In fact, it's very much a part of life there, and they just get on with it. It's just part of what happens. And also sort of like the idea that maybe there wasn't enough people turning up. A lot of the crowds have been better now as we got to the latter stages. So, they were just a little bit of a, thought you were maybe being a little bit negative, Scott, I think was the sort of vibe I got.
Shambles. That's what I say.
You did say shambles, didn't
absolute,
you? Yes.
And I still use that word now. Absolute shambles. Whether they change the protocol or not, whether the Americans are used to it or not, the rest of the world aren't. So, and I don't think the broadcasters, Sam, would be too happy if that happened on a regular basis next year during the
Well, I
World
was
Cup.
thinking about this. I think they might like it because it means that everyone's got to watch for longer.
Are they? Or are they going to switch off and just come
Yeah.
back at any given time? So we'll have to agree to disagree with that very experienced broadcaster, but I still say absolute shambles. But no, I had a very eventful day actually on Saturday. So 2 a.m, I'm working on the Chelsea Palmeiras game. Then I went to the Corridor Clips, and then I did the Real Madrid Dortmund game. So it was a fantastic day.
I think one of the conversations that we had was over kickoff times, and I think my point on the Club World Cup is actually I think you've seen better matches when they're later kickoffs, so the temperatures are a little bit cooler. I also think that actually that's something that FIFA have got to think about going forward next season with the World Cup and the scheduling, because I think we would all watch if the games were on at 9 and 11 or 10 and midnight. I do believe that. I think we would. And I think maybe they just need to push them to the other end of the day, maybe even earlier. Like if you're talking earlier in the morning, I mean, I don't think that's particularly great for anyone really, and won't be great for attendances. But I think the later the better going forward. That's just something they've got to make sure that they get right. Crook, obviously, Scott did 3 events in almost 24 hours. You probably went to work and complained about how hard you were working. So how was your week?
Can I just say, actually, right? Yes, I've been out of the country, but I was still on my sunbed, talking to agents, sending transfer stories in, even going to air the last couple of days of my holiday because I was bored of the missus. So let's not pretend I was just jollying.
So can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? When you say you were on the sunbed talking to agents, were you holidaying in the same place as agents?
No, I was on the phone.
Just like leaning over.
And actually, there is a funny story that I'll just regale you quickly. So every day at our all-inclusive hotel, they put one of those water mats across the pool, and obviously you had to try and run across it without falling in. I've got about 3 steps. They're not designed for 18 stone, 6'4" beasts to get across. But the wife did it, but I missed it because I was on the phone to an agent, and she was fuming. She said, "I've literally just walked on water, and you didn't see it."
I can't believe it. I like the fact that he's complaining that we're suggesting he's having a jolly, bearing in mind he sent us 150 pictures of him half naked with beer in his hands. Whatever gave us that impression.
I've still got that video of him doing water aerobics in my mind. However hard I try, I can't get it out of my mind.
That should definitely be on the YouTube video podcast, shouldn't it? That definitely. Right, okay, let's get into the football, the latest from the Club World Cup, into the Final Four. The Final Four, which includes Chelsea. Chelsea, the last Premier League team standing in the Club World Cup, edging past Palmeiras. How difficult was it for them, Scott? Because they relied on a goalkeeping error right at the very end, really, to get them through. What was the overall view of the match?
I thought Chelsea played really well, Sam, especially first half, and actually should have been more than 1-0 up. I mean, I've got to mention as well, because obviously they had no Lavia. They had no Moises Caicedo as well. So it looked like it was going to be Enzo Fernandez and Reece James in midfield. And yet Reece James got injured in the warm-up. So Andre Santos came on, and Maresca's already talked about how he sees Santos as more of an attacking midfielder. But he was the deep-lying midfielder there. So, and I thought he played really well. It was his debut. It was his first game after 2.5 years at being at Chelsea. I thought he was really, really good. Second half, you expected. I was saying at half time, look, the worry is that it's only 1-0 because they will come at Chelsea a lot more. And it's exactly what happened. They got the equaliser. Again, you talk about Robert Sanchez, and I don't want to be sort of overly critical, but he can't allow that shot to go in from there. And while it was a very, very sort of lucky, spawny winner, Chelsea over the whole 90 minutes, I thought it was probably the most impressive performance. I thought they did really well.
Joao Pedro also came off the bench for his Chelsea debut after signing at the end of last week. Bit of a whirlwind 7 days for him. How did he get on?
Do you know what, Sam? I was thinking, when we were speaking last time on this, where's he going to kind of fit in? And I'm still not quite sure because there's going to be so many players. If there's a final somewhere, not just in this tournament, but, a big game in the Champions League or whatever, what is the team going to be? Let me tell you now, he was sensational. He was brilliant. He was dropping off. His touch was fantastic. His awareness, his laying the ball out to different people. He created chances for himself. He could easily have got one, if not two goals. I can't think of a more impressive debut coming off the bench, off the top of my head. He was that good. And Liam Delap, we've just been saying about how Nicholas Jackson goes so far over the line, he can't see the line anymore. Liam Delap seems to just about know where the line is. And then he goes and gets himself booked in a really silly moment, which means he's now suspended for the semi-final. And the way that Joao Pedro came off, because you'd normally sort of think, actually, well, Nicholas Jackson should have come off the bench. No, okay, Joao Pedro. Actually, how well does he play? Now Liam Delap is suspended. Who starts between the two of them? And I think not just the way he played, but clearly it looks like he doesn't trust Nicholas Jackson 100% now, Enzo Maresca. I can see Joao Pedro starting the semi-final. I thought he was that good.
Chelsea got more competition for places in those forward areas because they signed Jamie Gittins this week. Crook, what are the details of this deal? This is something they've been trying to do for ages. Why are they so desperate to bring him in?
I think, obviously, they've lost a wide player in sending Jadon Sancho back to Manchester United. The Mykhailo Mudryk situation doesn't look like it's going to end particularly favourably for him. So they do need depth in those areas. And there's a potential that Noni Madueke is sold to Arsenal. We know that personal terms have been agreed. I've got to say, Arsenal fans don't seem overly enamoured about the prospect of signing him, particularly if it has a knock-on effect with Ethan Nwaneri and his contract negotiations. I know he's been frustrated anyway, that maybe he was overlooked towards the back end of last season. So I think that's one we're going to be paying keen attention to. But Gittins is someone they were trying to sign pre-Club World Cup, couldn't quite get a deal done, even though the two clubs are only a couple of million apart in their valuation. Obviously, Dortmund are now out. He is a Chelsea player. He was in a Chelsea tracksuit on the pitch at the end of the game before they'd actually officially announced his arrival. And it's another young talent that obviously they believe will have future sell-on. So it very much fits the Chelsea model.
Elsewhere, Esteval is also going to be a Chelsea player. And he is some player, but he's only about 15, isn't he, Scott? I mean, he scored a good goal, and he has scored a lot of goals. If you watch some of his highlights from this season, every week I was getting videos sent to me suggesting that he's going to be a world beater, and there was evidence there to back that up. But he's still very young.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first and foremost, it'd be interesting to see what the commentators call him, because actually, if you want to be really sort of picky, it's Esteval rather than Esteval.
Well, you teach us because you're the Portuguese expert.
Well, when there's no accent over the words and there's three syllables, you go with the second one. So, but look, we were calling him Esteval, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But look, he played well. He looked sharp. He scored a very good goal, although I don't think that should have been allowed. Was he looking like a world beater? No, but I can't imagine what was going through his mind, in the warm-up and as the game was just about to start, or just basically in the build-up to it. I mean, obviously he wants to play well. He wants to show that he's a good player. You're in the quarterfinal of the Club World Cup. But are you just about to make your future team lose about £50 million by, putting a man-of-match performance? And clearly he tried. He tried hard. I thought Chelsea played well against him. But again, I've said about Chelsea that they're stockpiling these young, talented players. Is he going to come in and boss it in the Premier League in his first season? My guess would be no. So I'll be interested to see what happens to him going forward, whether he does stay with Chelsea. But he's a talent, but we know that there's a lot of talent out there. And I've always been beating the drum now for Chelsea need the here and now player, but he's certainly one for the future.
Of course, you and I don't count our chickens, unlike Mr. Crook. And we still know that there is a tough game to play in Fluminense in the World Club Cup semi-finals on Tuesday night, 8:00, led by 40-year-old captain Thiago Silva, who Chelsea know very well. And there's this brilliant example of his leadership qualities doing the rounds at the moment. I don't know if you've seen it on social media, where he gives a very impassioned speech talking about the death of his father and how he didn't go and see him when he was first diagnosed with an illness. He didn't realize how bad it was. And the whole point of the thing is basically don't think about what you can do. Don't put off something that you can do today onto tomorrow. Do it now. Grab the opportunity. Make it happen, because it might not come around again. And it's impassioned. It shows the sort of leadership that he had displayed when he was at Chelsea, and something they've been missing, I think. But of course, Crook, Chelsea win the Club World Cup. That's not going to be good for you, is it? I mean, me and Scott are going to crow about that. We've already got our T-shirts that says we've won it all.
Well, I just wonder if you and Andy Jacobs might start being a bit nicer about the manager. You've both battered Maresca over the course of the season.
That's not true.
He might be about to make you the champions of the world.
That's not true. We haven't battered him. I haven't. I've just suggested. No, I've just suggested that he's achieved what was par. I didn't say it overachieved. You were going on about him.
Listen, there's a little bit of the Gareth Southgate about Chelsea's run to the final, isn't there? I mean, they found themselves on the more favourable side of the draw. I would suggest if they were playing PSG or Real Madrid last night, they probably would be out. And I still make the winners of that particular semi-final heavy favourites to win the competition.
You've done PSG, haven't you? Do you want to expand on why you think they're so heavy favourites?
Well, I was speaking to Kevin Hatchard about this before the tournament, and my concern with PSG was that the conditions over in the States wouldn't necessarily suit the way they play with that high press and possession-based football. But actually, they've gone on to have more average possession than any team in the tournament, with 72% going into yesterday's quarter-final. And Kev pointed out squad depth really would set them apart. And again, I think we saw that yesterday. They were able to keep Ousmane Dembele in cold storage until the final few minutes of the match. They go down to 9 men. They hit the bar with 9 men. You think, what are you doing trying to get a second goal? Just take it to the corner flag. Hakimi has the opportunity to do that. Instead, he takes on 3 defenders, pulls it back for Dembele, super sub, picks out the bottom corner. So they've got weapons off the bench that maybe a lot of other teams in the competition don't have. And they've just picked up where they left off in the Champions League final. It was a tight game against Bayern yesterday, and Bayern had their chances. But you always sense that PSG just had the extra gears. They've got youth on their side. They've got legs in the team. Yeah, I think it's going to take some team to stop them.
Interestingly, talking about squad depth, Real Madrid got past Dortmund in the other game, the other quarter-final. You covered that as well, Scott. I mean, Alonso and his setup seems to be working well. I thought they were in command of the game for large periods until right at the very end. I was fortunate enough, I was in a bar in Lucerne in Switzerland, and they had these 2 massive screens. You had the Club World Cup on one and the Lionesses against France on another. And I'd just been at the Wales-Netherlands game. And it was packed with people, and everyone was sort of divided between the 2 screens. And I thought it was a compelling performance by Real Madrid in the early stages. Fran Garcia was terrific on that left-hand side, scored a great goal. And they unearthed another brilliant kid going forward who is giving Kylian Mbappe a little bit of a run for his money.
Absolutely, Sam. And that was the big thing as I was, travelling in to look and thinking, hold on, what's he going to do here? Kylian Mbappe looks like he's fit. Yes, he was ill. He lost 5 kilos. He went to hospital, but he wants to be playing all the time, and he came off the bench in the previous game. But he kept with Gonzalo Garcia. As interesting, just in Xabi Alonso, he wants to do a very different Real Madrid to a Carlo Ancelotti, where they were quite happy to drop back, to allow the opposition to have possession, and then they'd strike at the right time. He wants this high press, everybody really going for it in the way that's kind of PSG play as well. And that's not really Kylian Mbappe's style. So it was really interesting for me that he went with Gonzalo Garcia, who had already scored 3 goals and an assist as well. I think not just because of that, but because of how they play without the ball. The first 20 minutes, they won the game. They absolutely blitzed Dortmund. I was really disappointed in Dortmund in how they played, but Real Madrid were excellent. You're right to mention Fran Garcia, that the left back got it forwards about 4 or 5 occasions, scored. Garcia, obviously, Gonzalo Garcia scored as well. And the second half, they were just so much in control. They really were. So for the ending to be what it was, I mean, if it had been a 3-0 win, honestly, that wouldn't have flattered Real Madrid. And yet they were literally one very good save away from Thibaut Courtois from it going into extra time. It was just a mental ending. It really was.
A quick mention for some of the Portuguese stars who had to play this weekend in tragic circumstances after the passing of Diogo Jota. I know that all of us have been on air in between now and Thursday, and we've expressed our shock, really, and surprise and how it affected us. And we're not necessarily connected in any great way to Liverpool or even to the people that are involved, but the football community, I think, was completely knocked off its kilter by this horrible tragedy. And for those who are very close to Diogo Jota and his family, and obviously his brother who passed away sadly in the same accident, it must have been very difficult to play this weekend. Pedro Neto, I know, sort of weighing up the idea of playing Nuno Mendes, Vitinha, Joao Neves, Gonçalo Ramos, Joao Cancelo, who we saw in tears. But obviously Ruben Neves, because he was playing for Al Hilal. I think literally 12 hours later, he's in Portugal as a coffin bearer for his great friend, and he must have been absolutely devastated. I just really can't get my head around the whole story, and I can't imagine what it must have been like for those players.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely harrowing. And the scenes before the Al Hilal game of Joao Cancelo and Ruben Neves clearly overcome with emotion. Presumably Ruben Neves knew at that point, win or lose, he was going to make the pilgrimage back to Portugal and have to carry his friend's coffin. And our heart goes out to him. Obviously a big Portuguese contingent in the Paris Saint-Germain team as well. I thought Joao Neves in particular was absolutely outstanding in the circumstances and really bossed the game. And it's going to take a long time for any of Diogo's friends, teammates, people who worked with him at Liverpool, and we saw Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, two of the hierarchy, Arne Slot, the manager, were all present at the funeral as well, and you could see the grief etched in their faces. And it's going to be difficult for Liverpool, for Portugal to navigate their way through this, because he was such a big character. He was such a good teammate and a good friend to everybody. And actually, Troy Deeney, I thought, hit the nail on the head on our show on Friday. Why do we only talk about how good a person somebody is when they've passed? I guess maybe it's because Diogo was so unassuming as a player, such an unsung hero. He was happy to go under the radar. But certainly when you look at the tributes that have been paid to him, hopefully in time they'll give his family and friends strength. But yeah, credit to all those Portuguese players. You'd have to have a heart of stone not to have been moved by Joao Cancelo and Ruben Neves during the minute silence the other night.
Yeah, Scott, you've been in many a dressing room. You know what it's like to sit next to people and to have banter flying around the place. But you also know it's like when someone leaves and there's an empty space next to you that wasn't there before. But in this circumstance, there's an empty space next to a couple of people in that dressing room that is not filled for a reason that is very difficult to try to understand, to fathom, and ultimately probably to come to terms with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I played with Marc-Vivien Foé. I mean, he didn't pass away when I was at West Ham, but he was an absolute gentle giant, a wonderful person. And you're right, we don't talk about the people. I mean, I do understand why we don't, because there are, but I don't think it's quite appreciated that we're quite happy to have a go at the modern day footballer, but I don't think they realise exactly what they do behind the scenes, and people perhaps just don't want to know. They only want to look at the negative. There was no negativity about Diogo Jota. I remember when Crookie called me when I heard about Gianluca Vialli when he passed away, and it really hit me. And yet he was a teammate of 25 years earlier, but because I was in contact with him during the Euros and he was getting back to me immediately and just before a game, it really did hit me hard. So for these guys, and Ruben Neves in particular, I was at Sky and covering the Championship when the two of them went to Wolves. And these are like Champions League players playing the Championship. We all just said, let's try and enjoy this quality that we're seeing right now. And the job that Nuno did was unbelievable. I can't begin to think, first of all, the family, the parents, to lose both their boys or two of their boys, and what they're going through. They will never get over that. But I also think there's a lot of teammates that will never get over it as well. And I don't know, and it feels a bit sort of crass to talk about the football side of it, but I don't know which way it's going to go for Liverpool. It's either going to really affect them and they're going to be affected on the pitch next season, or they're going to do it for Diogo and they're going to have all this something inside them that is never going to give up when they're 2-1 down and they find a way to win. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But it's a human tragedy, and I feel sorry for everybody connected with the family.
whatever happens on the football field is irrelevant anyway. But the Liverpool fans, I know, will certainly not allow that to tarnish the season. They won't worry about it. They'll just come together. They'll look after the players. They'll look after everybody involved. I know they'll do that. And there's a lot of talk about retiring the number 20 and the stuff that Liverpool are going to do for his family. And that's all great. But the key thing is that the people who are most affected are handled with care and looked after in a fashion in which that they can come to terms with this unspeakable grief. And that is going to be very, very difficult for them to do. And like, I read Andy Robertson's post that he put on Instagram, and you could tell he's obviously, they were very close. He went to his wedding 2 weeks ago. They went to Cheltenham together. They played darts together. They went to watch the darts together. He said he was the most British foreigner he'd ever met in his entire life. There was a close connection there, and those close connections, they're going to feel it harder than anybody else. So look, our best wishes to everybody at Liverpool, everybody who knows Diogo, and to the friends and family who are suffering at this time. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking a little bit about what's happening in Switzerland. England's women started their Euro campaign over the weekend, and to say they got off to a bad start is a bit of an understatement, actually. I think they were bullied on Saturday night by France. I think it was a difficult group. It is a difficult group because they've got the Dutch, they've got the French, and they've got a Battle of Britain with Wales to come through just to get to the quarterfinals. And when they get there, they'll play Germany or Sweden, should they get there. They might not, because, Scott, you know what it's like. You go into a tournament, you lose your first game. It's a bit of momentum lost initially, and then all of a sudden jeopardy strikes, because were they to lose their next game against the Dutch and France beat Wales, which is probably likely, they'll be out before they've even finished the second week of the tournament.
Yeah, it's an absolutely massive game Wednesday now, isn't it? And I mean, I try and turn any negative into a positive where I possibly can. And, I almost thought straight away to Argentina 2022 World Cup, lost the first game against Saudi Arabia, and suddenly your knockout stages has come a game or two earlier. And that's the way they've got to think now. They've, and if they can get through this and they can beat the Dutch and beat the Welsh, then suddenly you're on a roll again. And then maybe, that negativity and the fact that they've bounced back with that adversity can actually work in their favour. But there's no doubt about it, you don't want to be in this position. You don't want to lose your first game. And it is a difficult group. And the way the Dutch were so dominant against the Welsh, look, if they want to win the tournament, which is ultimately what they want to do, they have to understand and get through pressure situations. It's just you didn't expect or you didn't want this situation to happen so early.
Obviously, they came into the tournament with a few retirements, which disrupted the camp. Everybody thought that had been sort of parked and put to one side. And it was the French that were under the microscope because they'd left out three big players, and the coach was under a little bit of pressure because of the way that he handled that scenario. But it was not like that at all. Obviously, they came out with the idea of taking the game to France, and they did that for the first 10 minutes, but they got overloaded in midfield. They were outpaced in defence. The flanks worked really well for France. They didn't deal with that. I thought Jess Carter struggled a little bit down the left-hand side, had real problems with Cascarino in midfield. Georgia Stanway is usually very aggressive and front-footed, just got herself into a few too many tangles, and Kira Walsh couldn't get on the ball. And Kira is really important for England because she's the one that can pick that pass from anywhere. You saw the goal that she scored at the end, but her main job is to just ping the ball into areas where Russo can hold it up and then the wingers can get down the outside. None of that happened. The game plan just did not work. And Serena Wiegman afterwards said that they felt as if they created their own problem. And even Carter was saying, maybe we were a little bit scared. Well, they've got it all to do now because they've got to win their next game. Obviously, it works in two ways, right? If they win their next game, they're massive favourites to go through in second place behind France, because ultimately they're in a situation where the head-to-head mechanism, which is the sort of tie-break mechanism, works in their favour after that. But look, it's a big job, and we have got a podcast dedicated to the Women's Euros, the Women's Football Show, which is available on Monday, and you'll be able to get reaction to all of that. And of course, we've got live commentaries of all of the games on talkSPORT. We've got Spain against Belgium on Monday night. Wednesday, we've got England, Netherlands on talkSPORT at 5:00. So make sure you join the guys for that one. I'm actually heading back out to Switzerland on Tuesday morning. I'm only here for about 48 hours. And then I'm doing the Wales game, which I'm really looking forward to, actually. Wales against France. Get another look at France, because they look to me like they're a very well-organised team, very tactically aware. They just, didn't have the ball, quite happy to jump in midfield very quickly, then go on the counter and cause problems. They could have scored a couple more, I think. Right, let's talk about some of the domestic things that have happened. Anybody see the reveal video by Burnley for the signing of Kyle Walker? Anyone see it?
No.
I saw it posted in our group, but I didn't actually look at it. I've got to be honest.
Oh, it's so good. It is, the Lionel Richie video. Hello, is it me you're looking for?
Yes, I remember it well.
Where he does the moulding of the clay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Kyle Walker moulding a clay head of Lionel Richie. It's weird but brilliant all at the same time. It's really,
I'm
really
watch
good.
it. As soon as we finish this, I'm going to watch it.
You've got to see it. What's this transfer going to be like? Is this a bit like Sol Campbell going to Portsmouth, Crookie?
It's got those kind of vibes, isn't it? And actually, this will make you feel old, Sam. It was 23 years ago last week that Portsmouth signed one Teddy Sheringham when you and I were both covering their rise into the Premier League.
How many years?
It made me feel old, so I can only imagine how you're feeling right now. But yeah, he's going to bring experience, isn't he? Obviously, Burnley were a very good defensive setup last season. He alluded to that in his announcement statement, said he was looking forward to being a part of what Scott Parker is doing there. But you look at his performance for England against Senegal, and you look at his performances for Milan, who opted not to sign him permanently. You do worry, I think, if this is going to be the type of galvanising signing that Burnley fans are hoping for.
I like it. I like the signing. And yes, I agree with Crookie. Milan, he didn't pull up any trees. And for England in the last few games, he hasn't either. But this is a guy, we must not forget what he's done. I mean, he's been one of our best ever right backs this country's produced. He has gone into games against a fit and firing and informed Kylian Mbappe and kept him quiet in World Cups. He has got the experience to, in the dressing room when things aren't going well, to lead. When I talk about Chelsea and how Thiago Silva, I'd love to see him playing for Chelsea, being a couple of years younger. Those leaders. You can't express enough how important it is to have these leaders in the dressing room. And even if he's not quite the player that he used to be, I hold him in the greatest of respect for the player he's been. But two, for Burnley, a team that obviously, were built on defence last season, but they're going to come up against another level or two in this coming season. To have someone like him in that dressing room, on and off the pitch, I think is a really good signing.
Do you think he's someone who is expected to carry the team, or do you think he is there basically to help a so-called weaker team in the Premier League elevate themselves to the next level with his leadership skills largely off it rather than on it?
It's everything. It's everything. I still think he's good enough to play in the Premier League. I mean, look, he's at the age where people, a few sort of bad games, and I personally think, although I don't know, only Pep can answer this, that he kind of left Manchester City through personal issues rather than he was really bad. But it was the right time to go again and get some players out and bring some other players in. They still haven't filled his spot at City, by the way, in terms of having a proper right back there. But it's everything. And we've seen in the last 2 seasons, 6 teams go up and 6 teams go back down. And I think that Leeds have the best chance of staying up. But Burnley, with respect, I don't see Sunderland doing it at all. I think they'll really struggle. Burnley is the interesting one. Burnley, they have to step it up. They have to get some goals in there as well. You can't just rely on a defence that's been brilliant in the Championship, because that step up is so good. But he is there for absolutely everything, on, off the pitch, on match days, training pitch, example, how to hold yourself as a professional. And I think this will give him a little bit of a buzz. I think it's probably something that he needs to have. I don't know how long a contract he signed for, but for 1 or 2 years, I think this is just what he needs. And I think if he helps keep Burnley up, what a signing he'll prove to be.
Should we talk a little bit about some of the other big transfer news that's doing the rounds? Crookmeister has, as he's been telling you, been working his absolute butt off on the Sun Lounger, talking to agents, making contacts. Arsenal's pursuit of Eze, is that still happening?
Well, they seem to be juggling quite a few deals at the moment in terms of they've got players on a bit of a string. Eze being one that they've held personal talks with, Madueke another, as we've already mentioned. Then you've got Šeško and Gyökeres. Berta, the new sporting director, is trying to balance both those deals as well. I get the impression with Eze, if they pull the plug, he will go. Obviously, there's a release clause of £68 million in his contract. Palace, my understanding, is happy to take that in instalments. So if they decide they want to sign him, then that could happen pretty quickly. Same with Madueke. I think the striker pursuit is a little bit more complicated by the asking price of RB Leipzig and Sporting, respectively. But I think Arsenal fans are growing a bit impatient. By the time this podcast comes out, I think they will have confirmed the signing of Martin Zubimendi. Obviously, Kepa Arrizabalaga is signed as well. They've now signed more goalkeepers under Mikel Arteta than they have strikers. And that probably tells the story as to why they still haven't managed to quite go past second place in the Premier League. But yeah, I think Eze would be an exciting addition. And the suggestion is that if they do sign him, it doesn't necessarily stop their pursuit of a winger. So they might bring in Eze and Madueke potentially.
Well, that's interesting because they're not going to do all of those deals, are they? Clearly, they're not going to do Madueke, Eze, Šeško and Gyökeres. That isn't going to happen, surely, Scott.
No, it's one of Šeško, Gyökeres, and probably one of Eze or Madueke. I'm really surprised that Chelsea let Madueke go. I like him, and I think he can not just be that inverted winger on the right-hand side, but be the old-fashioned left winger on the left-hand side. I know Arsenal fans are not sort of overly enamoured by it, and there have been some Chelsea players going to Arsenal who have not done too well. From a Chelsea point of view, I want to see him stay. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Eze. Well, I don't know because he's agreed personal terms, hasn't he? So there's an issue there with Noni Madueke and Chelsea. No, they can't sign them all. But they do need that striker. That's an amazing line, isn't it? This sign. What was it? More keepers, did you say, than strikers?
Yeah.
You should see the figures on the amount of money they've spent on defensive players in comparison to offensive players as well. Yeah. And obviously that's because, initially what the idea was is to solidify the back line so then you can build from there. But at some point you've got to start investing in that front area because obviously that's the area that's stopping them from getting over the line, and that's
goals. Yeah, they drew far too many games last season. They need to turn draws into wins. How do you do that? You get the right striker in.
Absolutely. Reports about Nwaneri as well. Nwaneri, he's only 16, 17, Crook. I mean, he can't really want out, can he? Is this agent talk? What's the situation here?
No, not necessarily. I've been hearing a few whispers from various sources for several weeks now, and that's why I decided to press go on the story late last night that Nwaneri was a bit frustrated towards the back end of last season, that maybe he wasn't getting the game time that he felt he deserved. Obviously, he looks at Arsenal negotiating with the likes of Madueke and Eze, and that will be more competition for places at the top end of the pitch. So I don't think this is a financial decision. I think this is him wanting to be guaranteed that he's not necessarily a starter every week, but certainly a key player. And I do think it's a blind spot when it comes to Mikel Arteta. Young players at Arsenal, with the exception of Lewis Skelly, I think he's been reluctant to dip into the youth team. Aidan Heaven obviously is at Manchester United because he feels like he's going to get more minutes there. The same with Chidu Obi at the top end of the pitch. And obviously Emil Smith-Rowe had to leave Arsenal because he wasn't being picked. So, yeah, I wonder where Arsenal fans stand on this, the prospect of potentially losing an academy product to bring in a Chelsea player.
Not even any old academy product, but the youngest ever Premier League player, Scott. And you and I were privileged enough to be there the day that he came off the bench at Brentford for Arsenal. And we've seen him a number of times since. I thought he had a good season last year where he played a lot of games, especially in the first 8-9 months of the season. The last couple of weeks of the season, clearly he wasn't involved as much. But even so, at his age, to play the number of games that he did last season, I thought was pretty impressive. What would he be frustrated about?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, the modern day young player, whether it's agents, whether it's people around him, maybe pushing him to say he should be having more games. If I were advising him, I'd say you're at the perfect club right now. Speak to the manager, obviously, and find out what he's thinking. But, actions speak louder than words. And the fact that he played as many games as he did last season, he's always going to fall away a little bit because he is so young and he's going to be inconsistent. But what a talent. I'd be flabbergasted if Arsenal let him go. But again, it's about the people around him and say, look, this is about your development. I was quite critical of Mikel Arteta putting him on. He was 15 at the time, wasn't he?
He was.
I thought that was far too young. And then suddenly there's going to be a period of time where he's not going to be in the first team. And how's his head going to be there? And actually, he's come back and done really well. So fair play to him and the people around him there. So I'll give him absolute compliments. But you're at Arsenal Football Club. It's one of the biggest clubs in Europe, let alone the country. Just develop naturally. Speak to the manager and forget about the money side of things. The money will follow. The money will follow quicker than it ever did in my time or even in 15, 10 years ago. One good contract. Just keep doing what you're doing. And my advice would be stay at Arsenal.
Interesting to see what happens next. Look, we all work in different ways. Okay, some of us work on a sun lounger with a pitcher of beer and a mobile phone. If you're Marcus Rashford and you want to show everybody how professional you are, you dress up as Rocky Balboa, you get out on the old Philadelphia steps, you run up, you do your bits and pieces, get on social media, show how fit and firing you are and ready for action. Come on, come and get me, come and get me, come and get me. Is anyone else answering that plea, Crookie?
Not at the moment, I don't think. And we were on air on Friday, weren't we, when people around Rashford were briefing certain journalists that he was ready to return for pre-season, he was going to be 100% committed. I just wonder who is advising him PR-wise, because by leaking that you're going to give 100% in training, you're almost admitting that you weren't doing that before. And I joked on air, didn't I? What man goes to work is a headline. He's a Manchester United player. He's a highly paid Manchester United player. He's a boyhood Manchester United fan. So, of course, he should be committed to the club that he supposedly loves. Ultimately, the reason they put that briefing out was because nobody is knocking at Marcus Rashford's door, certainly not clubs of the stature that he wants to play for, the likes of Barcelona and Bayern Munich. Listen, Barcelona may well pull that cord between now and the end of the window, but he's going to be very much on their terms. It'll be a loan deal. Manchester United will have to pay a lot of the wages. And I thought it was great what Manchester United did in reply in this sort of PR war, if you like, by making it clear that Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho, Anthony, Jadon Sancho and Tyrone Malacia weren't welcome at the training ground. They've been given extended leave, having all expressed a desire to leave the football club. And actually, Rory Jennings hit the nail on the head on talkSPORT last week. When you leave Manchester United, and I know that they finished 15th in the Premier League last season, they're not the force they once were, it's usually a downward step. And I would be surprised if any of these players who are desperate to escape their Old Trafford nightmare end up at a bigger club than United. Be careful what you wish for, boys.
And that was the view of the Manchester United press office.
Did they get Mr. T or Dolph Lundgren to sort of answer back in a social media post or something?
Yeah, maybe they should do that. Yeah, that would be good. They were linked with Dominic Calvert-Lewin overnight, though, Crook.
Yeah, I can see that. They need a number 9. Obviously, there's a lot of money been spent on Cunha. There's going to be a lot of money spent on Brian Mbeumo. And if I had £1 for every time a Manchester United fan asked me what was happening there, I'd be a very rich man. But I do think that move will happen. He's made it clear to Brentford that he doesn't necessarily want to continue his journey there. And if he leaves, he only wants to go to Manchester United. So they've not got tens of millions of pounds to spend on a striker. And as Arsenal are finding out, they're in short supply. It's a risk, obviously, with someone like Calvert-Lewin because he's had so many injuries. But to pick up a proven Premier League striker on a free transfer, I don't think it would be a disastrous deal for United. Does he improve the forward line they've got at the moment? If he's fit, clearly he does.
Ollie Watkins would improve most forward lines as well. Where's he going?
I don't know on that one. Again, obviously, he's on Manchester United's list. I think he's a backup option for Arsenal, but he's not really of the age profile that these big clubs are looking for at the moment. I think Villa would sell him if an offer came in, because we spoke on the pod earlier in the week about PSR and that Villa are treading a fine line there. They've sold off their women's team in order to stay on the right side of the financial regulations. They're going to have to sell one sizable asset this summer, and I think they'd rather sell an Ollie Watkins than Morgan Rogers, for example, who's got a lot of clubs headhunting him.
They're not going to sell an Ollie Watkins because there's only one Ollie Watkins. They can't sell two of them. It's impossible. They can only sell the one.
But you get where I'm coming from. Martinez,
Journo.
Watkins, Jacob Ramsey, I think they're players that if the right offers came in, they would sell.
Go on, Scotty, you wanted to say something?
Sorry, mate. Yeah. Look, it's a big season for Mikel Arteta this coming season. Finished second 3 consecutive times. I understand why 2 of those times up against arguably the best team in English history. The last season was the one. And if they finish second or even third again and don't win a trophy, what's going to happen in 12 months' time? So buy for the here and now. Again, they've got enough youngsters. And Ollie Watkins, I think, would be a great signing. He's Premier League ready. Sesko is young. He's a good player, but he's very young and there's still no guarantees. And we've seen what happens when young strikers come to England. It doesn't always work. Gyökeres, the questions will always be asked about him because it's Portuguese football, but, he's sort of mature. Ollie Watkins, yeah, there's no sell-on value, but you know what you're getting with him. And he'll be desperate to play for Arsenal as well. I think he'd be a great signing for them. I really do.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was thinking about this whilst we were talking about Arsenal and their sort of link with Madueke. Do you think that this is how it works? Brighton scout the players, Chelsea buy them and give Brighton loads of money, and then Chelsea think, well, we need to offload some players. So where's that number for Arsenal? It's quite an interesting arrangement, really, isn't it? Spurs looking at Kudus. That'd be a good move for them, Scotty, do you think? You've seen a lot of Kudus at West Ham.
Yeah, but West Ham fans will not want that. My goodness me. Selling one of their best players to Tottenham. Good luck if they do that, and they're going to have to buy. They're usually
so good with PR at West Ham, though. So
that honestly, that to say that will not go down well is one of the biggest understatements of the century. So they better buy well if they do. But there's no doubt about it. He's a very, very good player, and he did look at times a little bit disinterested. So it's a big season for West Ham as well, isn't it? Of course, with Graham Potter, keep your best players if you can.
Didn't he fall out with Lopetegui? I thought he would have been happier with Graham Potter. Crook?
Yeah, I think he just sees himself as someone who can play at a higher level, can play in the Champions League. There are quite a few clubs who have taken a look at him this summer, Newcastle as well, maybe even your beloved Chelsea, because they need another wide player, don't they? But I think
when you're in all these competitions, Crook, and you're winning all these things and you're going deep towards the end, it's hard, we need players.
I think Scotty's right. It's not just the fans who don't particularly want to do business with Tottenham. I'm not sure David Sullivan does either. I think Scott Parker was the last player to cross that divide back in, 2011. There has been a bid that's gone in. My understanding is it was a few days ago, actually, of £50 million. West Ham certainly want more than that. And I think there's a bit of a Tottenham tax as well. I think they'd probably sell him for cheaper to Chelsea just to avoid doing that transaction with Spurs. But they're not in great shape PSR-wise either. They spent the Declan Rice money. They had a poor window last year, and actually we all thought they had made some good signings, but it didn't work out. So they need to sell, and he is obviously the most sellable player.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a poor window in retrospect at the time. We were all very positive about it. But a lot of that goes down to the fact that even the ones they did sign, Lopetegui didn't use in the first few weeks of the season, which was a cause of a lot of concern amongst the fan base and actually started the problems, I think.
And Nicholas Fulkrug was out injured for most of the season as well. Yeah. So he could be another new signing in inverted commas.
Yeah, and he's got a bit about him anyway, hasn't he? That's for sure. Right, thank you very much, Scotty. Have a good rest of the week. We're going to come back on Thursday and do the Club World Cup semi-finals because Scott's going to be in North America. And we're also going to have a reporter live at the games, which is going to be interesting. We're going to have a full American experience on the program on Thursday, looking back at the semi-finals. By which time, Crook might have got a haircut.
Well, yeah, it won't happen till Wednesday. I've got a busy week this week. So,
what are you doing between now and Wednesday?
And it takes 20 minutes. You said it yourself.
Yeah, tomorrow's a packed day, and then Tuesday we've got our monthly racing trip. So it's going to have to be Wednesday.
Okay. Do you know they open quite early?
I'm normally on breakfast, as Scott will testify, early in the morning.
I do listen to him a lot, unfortunately.
For 10 minutes. Right. Thank you very much, Sun Lounger Boy. We'll see you on Thursday to look back at the Club World Cup semi-finals and bring you more of the latest transfer news.